Hi, welcome to the Pursuit of Truth. So I was watching an Iranian ambassador speaking so calmly, and like if you didn't know any history or you didn't know what was going on, you'd think, well, this person seems very calm and the things they're saying seem very accurate when he's talking about the aggression in his words that's been brought against his country. And obviously we're talking about the Israel-Iran war, conflict, whatever the terminology is for it. And it made me think about how you could listen to each side, each of the spokesperson and leaders. They both talk in the same way as it's the other person's fault or the justification for doing it. With Israel is that they believed that Iran were going to make a nuclear bomb. And of course, the threat for them that is claimed that Iran want death to Israel, death to America. I mean, the thing is, like, before I go on, the fact is that the only knowledge I have of Iran, Israel, and of most things is based on, history books, the things we were taught at school, the things our parents taught us, the things we've seen on TV or read. And of course, that colours each of us, and each of us have different things. I suppose in different countries, they have different resources, and maybe, like they say, the victor of a war writes the story, and maybe those that weren't victors wrote their own versions of things, and who knows whether the ones that were, there are true. But just I'm trying to show that if at all I'm ignorant in what I say, it's because of the information that I have been provided. And because we have this impression of countries, from the Western standpoint, of seeing the good countries and the not good countries, and this is coloured from a very early age, and therefore any action is always, even if it's the same action, is always tainted by that. And because I was thinking, like, with people, instantly think of Iran as, as one of the bad countries, and so therefore, and Israel is one of the good countries, or the US is one of the good countries, and therefore, if they do something, then well, it can't be for a bad reason, because why would they ever do it? Even though, well, what are we all? We're all human beings, and we're all capable of these things, unfortunately. And then I was thinking about, well, isn't it strange how certain countries, are like the white hats, are the good guys, and yet when you look at the history, that doesn't actually bear out. When you think of, like, the United Kingdom, the heart of the West, as it were. Obviously, modern West would be America, but historically, most people would think, oh yeah, Britain is the UK, England, it's a good country, but when you look at all the things that it's done, all the colonization, the slavery, the treatment of different places, different people, and I know, there's history and stuff, but what I mean is, how did England or UK come up with being considered like a good country? Yeah, there may have been things like, the abolition of slavery, or, charters and, bits of law that have been written in to protect humanity and in the UN, or, whatever. And the same with America, with its, many wars, with the illegal wars of Iraq, Afghanistan, the Vietnam incident. And yet some countries, like, say, Russia or Iran or North Korea, because of the hatred usually of the West, are suddenly somehow bad. But I wonder whether they've done as much bad things. Obviously, I know Iran or Mesopotamia, there's a long history of the things that they've probably done. If the things, like, maybe it's actually possible that all people in the past, all human beings and all countries have done bad things. Whether they weigh up, I don't know, but it is interesting how we have that view, and then that colours everything. It just made me think about that. Yeah, sorry about that edit there. So yeah, that it colours our view of these things. But what interests me is you hear the Iranians, you hear the Americans, you hear the Europeans, you hear the Israelis, and each will come from their standpoint, and each will talk about humanity, each will talk about choice and etc. And yet it's the same thing. You know, they all sound convincing in their own way, and they all, because I was thinking, like, this guy seems like so, you know, defensive of Iran, and obviously the view that in the West we have of Iran is, you know, that it's a dictator, and I don't know how long the supreme leader has been there for, and whether they have fair elections or not, and yet are they happy with that? And of course he's talking about, you know, what Israel is doing is against humanity, and whether there are, yeah, I did question whether, you know, countries are allowed to just bomb other countries without, you know, regulations and UN and all that kind of stuff, and trying to put a case down like they did during the Iraq and Afghanistan war. But he's talking about, like, it's a crime against humanity and the civilians that are getting killed, but aren't Iran also killing civilians in Israel when they're retaliating? And aren't also Iran funding, you know, Hamas and Hezbollah, known terrorist organizations who also are killing civilians? So it just struck me, and I know I'm going to put this in a Pursuit of Truth in the next one, but how he's talking about humanity, and I'm not just singling out him, because I'm sure all of them, all of these world leaders, and they do it, they all claim, and maybe, you know, like I talked about before, is that we're all brought up in our own world, and we all believe that world that we're in and defend it, irrespective of what we're doing to each other as human beings. And yet, just to hear him talk about humanity, and yet, you know, whether it's a Jewish person or a Muslim person or Christian or a non-believer or an Israeli or an Iranian or, you know, whoever it is, whatever tag we put on it, intrinsically we're all human beings. And so we're all doing this to each other. And when we believe in this justification that we taught ourselves about, you know, sometimes there's justification for war and killing each other to try and keep our domain over bits of land that we've cut up. But it just made me think of, like, how futile we are as human beings, how lost we are, that we justify war, we justify the killing of each other. And the thing is like, we do it with blissful ignorance and thinking that we're doing it for honor, or we're actually the good guys and they're the bad guys, and we had to do this. We don't really want to do it, but we have to do it because otherwise. But all of it is based on a lie, in the sense that we're all brainwashed to a degree. In, you know, if you're a baby, depending where you're born, it depends on what you believe in. It's not intrinsically true per se. You know, if the same baby was born in America, they have a certain mindset. If they're born in Iran, they have a certain mindset, or Israel, they have a certain mindset, and they grow up in that, and that becomes their bias. And yeah, it's a shame, because it means that you then can't see the truth, and you could be killing each other and thinking you're doing the right thing, and thinking, because you don't know any different. Even if you're told, even if you're shown, you still won't. Try to convince someone something that they firmly believe, because it's been banged in for years and generations, and it's impossible. Look at how two countries can't even live next to each other without wanting only one of them to own a bit of land that no one can take with us, because we all die. It just made me think about that, as how I don't know how deeply lost it seems that human beings are, that we buy into these things. And, you know, like I always say on Pursuit of Truth, until these systems, until this idea of division of humanity is gone, we're always going to do that. We're always going to stay in the box and believe in, you know, our echo chambers and all that kind of stuff, and defend it. And it's just, I don't know, it's just disappointing. But it just made me see, like, when you hear the different people talk, these leaders talk about this and justify it, and in their minds maybe they believe that, I don't know, and yet it's all us, the ones who are under the power, who mainly will suffer. Take care, dear. Bless and peace.